E agora a emissão é tua, João Adelino Faria.
Muito bem.
Well, we're going to try and make up some time, so we're going to defense the most fascinating world of digital transformation.
O nosso próximo
Our next guest speaker helps companies that are looking for the right way to use digital tools and how to use these technologies and increase their value. Curiously enough, they've found several situations. Here we have Professor Michael Wade. Welcome. We have you on screen.
I get back to you in a second, okay? So this year,
I was saying that our research has proven that 87% of digital transformation problems fail. We want to know why. So our new guest is a professor of innovation and strategy and directs IMD's Global Center for Digital Business Transformation. He's written several books, many case studies, and he has been elected for the Digital Shapers Hall of Fame.
This conference. Thank you for waiting. It's our delay, it's our fault, but let's get to the business right away. We have a room full of people here and live across the world, and everybody wants to hear from you your thoughts about the digital transformation and why it is so difficult, why so many fails. It's your turn, please, Professor. Welcome.
Well, thank you very much for inviting me, and I envy you being together in a room. I wish I was there with you.
Next time.
So it's very nice to be here. Next time, indeed. And also hello to Philippe and Paolo, who are going to lead a discussion after this session. So I'd like to talk about digital transformation. It is a buzzword. I think you have to agree. Everybody talks about it, but it is quite rarely defined. So what exactly is digital transformation? Because I think the first step towards achieving it is understanding exactly what it is. So what is it and what isn't it? And so often we see it described in kind of these terms, and you even see these kind of images. You know, it's like a project, it starts, and then there's some kind of a magical metamorphosis, and the caterpillar turns into a butterfly, right? And you've achieved your goals in digital transformation. This is not what we see at all. These projects are often long, they take a long time, and they never actually finish. It's a constant process of change and transformation. And by the way, you may think it's nice to be a butterfly, but the average life of a butterfly is about 3 days. So you certainly want your digital transformation to last longer than that. So what is digital transformation? Well, it's not this either. I mean, you can spend a lot of time with post-it notes and innovation, design thinking workshops. You can come up with a lot of great ideas, but this is not going to give you the results that you need. Digital transformation is hard work. It's about scaling promising ideas into breakthrough solutions and then making those big and powerful. It's also not this, right? There are so many cool technologies out there. I spend a lot of my time following these technologies and the latest and greatest, like blockchain, NFTs, metaverses. I heard the last speaker talking about this. This is really cool, interesting stuff, but it is not digital transformation. So what is digital transformation? At least for us, we define it as follows: organizational change through the use of digital tools, technologies, and business models to improve performance. And I think it's really key to break this down. Why are you doing it? Well, you're doing it for one simple reason: because you want to improve your performance. And so that has to be clarified, that has to be clear. Why? What performance impact are you looking for? Maybe it's, increased revenue, maybe it's enhanced efficiency or productivity or customer satisfaction, whatever it is, make sure it's defined clearly, and digital can help you get there as a powerful enabler. But it's not an end. It's not the result. It's not the goal. It's an enabler to help you get there. And for most cases, when it comes to digital transformation, the process is organizational change. It's not really a digital project at all. It's an organizational change project. And you're more likely to be successful if you treat it as such. Now, for us at least, we make a distinction between two things: digital transformation and digitization. Not to say that one is more important or more valuable than the other. They're both valuable. Digitization is taking something that's analog, offline maybe, and digitizing it, putting it online, making a digital version. You can get a lot of benefit from this. But this is not the same thing as transformation. Transformation is more about finding new ways to create value for your customers. It's bigger, it's more ambitious, and it's harder to achieve. So the unfortunate truth about digital transformation, and we've collected, I work at a business school and we have a research center, we collect a lot of data. We looked at all this data and we tried to figure out a number. What is the success rate for digital transformation? And unfortunately, our conclusion is that it's quite low. 87% of these transformations fail to meet objectives in some important, tangible way. So instead of talking about all the successes out there, I want to spend the time I have with you today talking about a few of the mistakes that organizations make. And anyway, screw up the more interesting than fun success stories anyway. And I want to focus on three big mistakes that organizations typically make when it comes to digital transformation. Now, here's a question for you. When you think about this, is this a reasonable goal? I want my organization to be more digital. It's certainly a common goal. We hear it a lot. But in our view, it's a dangerous goal, and it will lead you down a path where you're focused too much on the technologies themselves, right? And one of the most common goals that we hear is we want to improve our digital maturity. Maybe you've worked with a consulting organization and they've benchmarked you, on a scale of 1 to 5 or 1 to 10, and your goal is to increase your digital maturity from a level 2 to a level 4 or a level 5, for example. You may achieve this. You can spend a lot of money and use a lot of resources to do that and take a lot of time, but it won't necessarily improve your performance, right? So mistake number one, and it's a big one, is focusing on digital for the sake of digital. Yes, it's cool. Yes, you want those shiny new digital objects. But focusing too much on that will take attention away from what really matters, which is improving your performance. All right, so that is mistake number one. Mistake number two is kind of an interesting one. It's focusing on disruptors rather than disruption. Now, you may think about these two things and wonder, well, really, what's the difference between the two? Well, when it comes to digital transformation, the difference is big, right? Because if you're going to be disrupted, it's going to be because of some disruption that's happening in your sector, right? The disruptors, the companies, they're just the ones that bring it to life. But you are never going to be better than them at what they do, right? So chasing them is probably not going to give you the result that you want, but understanding fundamentally what the disruption is and then being better than they are at that thing, that's what's going to give you the benefit that you want, right? There's a nice quote from this guy who says, if all our competition is looking at us and we're looking at the consumer, then we win, right? So what you've got to figure out, and in fact, everybody's got to figure out, is what are the fundamental disruptions that are happening in your industry, right? If you're a telco, it's not Skype that's hurting you, it's low cost or free text messaging, right? That's the disruption, right? Skype was just the one that brought it to life. You know, it's not WhatsApp that disrupted Skype. It's you know, chats, right? Communities of messaging, right? Groups. So you got to figure out what it is for your sector. What are those fundamental disruptions that are changing and will in the future change your market? For us, you know, I'm in the education space. It's absolutely clear. It's technology mediated learning, right? That is what's disrupting our space. And you know, many of our interactions are very much like this one. You know, it used to be in the classroom, but now it's online, and we have to figure out how to deal with that and how to become better than everybody else in online learning. And then occasionally, you know, strange things happen. Like a few weeks ago, when I had this session, we were Zoom bombed by a camel. And I can tell you that this did not happen very often in the physical world. So we have to be ready for anything. Now, the third mistake is a big one, and this is managing digital in silos. Now, why do organizations manage their digital transformation in silos? Usually it's for one simple reason. It's easier that way, right? You don't have to work with peers in different departments or functions or lines of business. You just have to worry about your own thing. But the problem with digital, or the opportunity with digital, it's both, is that the benefits are amplified by scale. The more it can be implemented across the organization, typically the more benefit that you get from it, which means that you have to work together, right? You have to bridge those silos. And when we looked at dozens and dozens and dozens of transformation journeys across multiple industries and geographies, we tried to understand and differentiate between successful transformers and less successful transformers. And our conclusion was that there are 10 critical elements that make a difference when it comes to digital transformation. So these are the 10. Now, the good news is it's not 30, but the bad news is it's not 3. And if you look at these 10, you'll see that they're not all to do with technology, right? There's a whole bunch of factors that are not to do with technology at all, but nevertheless matter a lot when it comes to digital transformation success. Now, we put these in an orchestra because we wanted to, you know, use the metaphor of going and listening to music. You don't just want to hear one instrument, you want to hear multiple instruments, but they have to play together. They have to be orchestrated. So what are the 10? Let me go through these relatively quickly for you. We have, starting from the left, the go-to-market, products, services, offerings. Are they the right ones? Do they make sense today and going forward? Or do you need to think about different types of products and services? Add them, retire them, digitize them. What is the landscape? And should it change? And how do you get those offerings to your customers? The channel. Are there new channels that you can use? Digital channels, platforms. You know, how should those channels be leveraged to improve your performance? Then there's the green section. How do you engage with key stakeholder groups? And the 3 most critical ones are your customers, but also your employees and other partners you have in your ecosystem. Are you capturing information from them? Are you communicating with them, listening to them, you know, engaging with them? Can you do that more effectively? Can digital tools and technologies help you to do that? Then you have the purple section. The purple section is how you do things. So your processes. Are your processes up to date? Do they need to be upgraded, harmonized, standardized, digitized in order to meet the challenges going forward into the future? Also in this category is your IT capability. It is extremely difficult to successfully transform digitally if you don't have a well-functioning IT foundation, right? That's secure, that's adaptable, you know, that's not too siloed. And then you have the orange section. This is really important and often overlooked. It's the organization itself. You know, how you're set up as far as hierarchies, functions, lines of business, markets, does that make sense going forward? Incentives are extremely important. Are you rewarding and penalizing people for the type of behaviors that they'll need to compete into the future? Or do you need to change your incentive structure in some way? And then finally, I think the big one, the most important one, the most challenging one is culture and mindset. You know, is your organization ready to embrace the change that's needed to compete in the future? And we see that organizations that are successfully transforming are considering all these pieces together and orchestrating them as they move forward in time. This, of course, is extremely difficult to do. It's extremely challenging. We've conducted multiple analyses to try and figure out some of the better and worse practices. Here's one of them, and here's another one. And they typically look like this, right? So at the very top, you'll have a high-level objective for your organization. Then you'll have a more specific objective for that particular project, that particular digital project. And then you look at all the different instruments and you include the things that you need to do on those instruments in order to achieve the goal that you put on the top, right? And you'll see arrows here. And the arrows link to the amount of effort required. Long arrows mean that's a lot of it. We got to do a lot of work on that particular element. Sometimes the arrow starts at the very bottom, meaning you got to start from scratch. Sometimes they start midway up, meaning you've made some progress in that area, but there's still quite a bit of work to do. So I'll leave you with this final question, which is also a challenge. You know, if you want to successfully transform digitally, what does your digital transformation orchestra look like? Have you thought through all these elements and considered them? Are they included in your digital transformation roadmap? Because if they aren't, our data suggests it's going to be difficult. It's going to be a challenge to successfully transform. All right, maybe I will pause there and hand the floor back to the facilitator to take it to the next stage.
Professor Michael Wade. Professor, thank you so much. I think you have to go to your students right away. And thank you for being here and have time to talk with us. Let's go and talk about this digital transformation. My next guests, Philippe Borgognesque. Philippe, pardon, on va parler en anglais. CTO at Devoteam Group e Paulo Cardoso do Amaral, professor assistente da Católica Lisbon. Welcome.
Thank you. Welcome.
After this lesson, my question is still the same. Why this digital transformation it's so difficult? Why there is so many failures? 84 or 87%, 84% fail. Why, Philippe?
Yeah, I think it was expressed before. It's culture mainly. I'll give you an example for a very traditional industry, insurance. Big insurance companies are reluctant to change the way and to disrupt through technology the way they operate. And still you find AI-based software for evaluating risk, for evaluating fraud. And so now we are finding new small insurance companies, and also some big ones, who want to leverage all those technologies to change the way they operate and disrupt the insurance market.
Do you think that, as the professor says, because most of the companies try to put in silos to make the digital transformation, that's the main issue, right?
Yeah.
One of the main issues.
Yeah.
They don't think global.
Yeah. Because if you change the relationship with the customer, of course, you need to change how the employees operate, how your partners operate, and so you have to be creative in how to use technology to disrupt not only the customer experience, but the company way of working.
Paul, the same question, why there is so many failures when companies want to do this digital transformation. We think that digital transformation, it's not something so new as metaverse, but it keep going failing.
I'm not going to repeat what
Yeah,
was
of course.
already said. So you have all these internal issues. I'm going to talk about the external ones, meaning we don't have a crystal ball. So it's quite difficult to foresee what will be successful. And when you engage in a digital transformation project, you need to set your objectives, which is strategy. And strategy is difficult. And if you have difficulties in transforming, it will be difficult to adapt. So one major competence companies should have to be successful. Mike didn't mention it, but we have been working on it for 7 years. It's called Digital Business Agility, which is on top of the digital orchestra that Mike talked about, which somehow ensures that we are able to try and succeed, because projects of 7 years are not longer possible, not even 2 years. We really have to shorten up our learning practice so that we eventually succeed.
And that's something global. I mean, it's different from the failure or the way that the companies are doing this digital transformation in Europe, in America. It's different geographically, or it's a mistake or a failure worldwide.
Well, I've worked in a few companies from different countries. I would say that it's pretty much the same. The difficulties are shared.
Philippe, when we talk about disruption, the professor was saying that most of the companies want to do the same thing that the others are already doing. So disruption means what? Means a new idea or much more than that?
Much more than that. In fact, the name was mentioned before. It was the design thinking. It's a way where you behave as a customer, for instance. You are in the as a customer, and you see how you can change his experience. And it's the starting point, I think, before technology. Of course, today, if you don't use cloud and all the innovation on the cloud, you are lost. But anyway, you have to start with the user experience and with the design thinking way of creating products. It's not an IT project. It's to create a product which is used by customers and which is also used by employees and partners.
So what's the process? I mean, you have a customer and you have to ask, or how do you realize what's wrong, what could be better, different, disruptive?
Yeah, that's why it's difficult. It's a mix of technology and also business. So we create teams, we call studio, and here you involve business, CEOs, architects, developers, and UX, the people who, and they work together, maybe permanently, to create something which changes the way the industry operates and you operate. And that's the difficulty to mix those two types of profiles. And of course, you have an additional difficulty that it changes, but a lot of CEOs are not very knowledgeable about digital. So for
Why is that?
Because it's their culture, it's their training. Not the new one in the startup, of course, not in some companies, but it's still a challenge. So you have CEOs who look the fantastic presentation on metaverse, NFT, blockchain, and they have expectations which are much longer than what they should achieve in the next 2 years. So it's a difficulty which maybe will disappear in the next 10 years.
Paul Cardoso, I'm sorry, he was trying to speak Portuguese again. When a company wants to make this digital transformation and ask your help, what would you say to them to start? With whom would you like to speak first, and what the steps? Because with this view of the CEO that is not paying attention.
Well, it's a leadership project, so of course everybody's involved. But there is a process. And we always start with the vision that creates value. And it's not enough to ask the customer, because sometimes we are able to build a value proposition that the customer is not even aware of that would be possible. So we have other means to get there, and there are several methodologies. One, well, the traditional design thinking customer journey, as I said, is not enough, and we call it value drivers. And we talk about cost value, experience value, and platform value. Platform value has a lot of network effects in it. There are several business models, so we have 15 business models to choose from, and that's it's like a menu to try to first understand what's happening. So why are current companies being successful, and what can we do to disrupt? And that's what we call disruptions. We take the traditional 95 vision of what disruption means, something new. It's always the value proposition, and then we start from there. With the good value proposition, we can somehow be sure that we are offering what makes sense, and the only thing that you need is to identify the sustainability of that value proposition, saying, if I build it, am I able to sustain it and make money out of it? And we have courses on that.
It's easier to do this digital transformation in bigger companies than small ones, or the opposite?
Smaller ones obviously are faster because everything is easier. Bigger ones have more resources. So you have advantages and trade-offs so maybe in the big ones you can do some entrepreneurship and have methodologies where you can overcome that. Disruption is always difficult in incumbents because they hardly will, create a value proposition that will somehow substitute their traditional one. So it's easier to disrupt in small companies, but sometimes small companies don't have the resources. But now we are seeing all these ICOs and all these venture capital coming in, and suddenly the small companies are able to get access to big resources. I have a number of examples, and they're changing the world.
Philippe, we have here and watching us thousands of people, we hope. I think we have. We have the numbers over there. It's 1,000 watching us. And expecting, most of them, how can I do this digital transformation? My question is, all kind of companies can do that. I mean, a cultural company or just the IT companies?
No, frankly, we think that all companies now should consider digital as a way to disrupt and become digital transformator. Use digital to operate differently, create new business models. So it's for all. So as you told, there is one possibility. You see that in the bank, big banks acquire digital banks, small startup. But it's not so easy, because as we said before, you have not only to change a way of delivery banking services, but you have to change a lot of the operation of the bank. So it's not so easy. So the other possibility for instance, a bank, to start the process of disrupting, and I think all industries have to do that.
There's another question, because when we're talking about digital transformation, and we already spoke about it here, the security. When we talk about digital transformation, we have the problem of security. A lot of people used to think that if I have more digital, and if I go digital, I'm going to be more vulnerable. It's a common mistake. It's a mistake. What are we doing to avoid that? Both of you, Philippe, you can.
Well,
or Paul.
There are answers, meaning when you know the risks, you have to prepare for the risks. And the issue is you have people taking you that are only doing that, so they are really good. And you will never be as good as them. So you have to count on the industry, but there are solutions that can overcome the problem. And if you start using, for example, the blockchain environment where everything is encrypted, that's a completely new world where you will rethink everything all over again. You don't need firewalls because everything is encrypted, and a number of different aspects that are really more secure. Of course, you will always find some fragilities, but you have to work to overcome them. And I believe that in this sense, the future will be a better one.
I agree with that.
Evolve.
I agree. I think cybersecurity is a key topic, and you have to manage both the innovation and the disruption and the cybersecurity. So you need teams, you need the help of the big security companies, and you have no choice.
Do you think that the pandemic changed in some way the way that most of CEOs look to this digital transformation? I mean, there is a huge transformation. We talk about it all the time. The way we work, the way we sell, the way we buy, the way we do business. is digital transformation was affected also in a big way with the pandemic, Philip?
Yeah, I think that we are used to remote work. We are used to use the internet to buy services, to deliver services. So I think it's contribute to accelerate the movement of digital transformation. Because 10 years ago, 20 years ago, I discussed with a big electric company about internet. And he told me, "Oh, I'm disappointed. You talk about internet. It's a game. It's nowadays, thanks to what happened in the past 10 years, it accelerates."
Paul.
I think that there is more to it, because the pandemic's helped, but there is really more to it. Look, the change is there. The difficulty starts in we try to change with the technologies that we already know. And if we try to do the same, even with new technologies, we are not changing. So we have to do both things. First, learn about the new technologies, because the future will be built on the technologies that are being built today, and the solutions that we also don't know. So you have to play on like two chess games at the same time, and that's the challenge. Now there are hints. So I believe in this evolution much more than pandemics, because there is a change, but it's more to it. So if we look back, we started changing functions and then processes, and then with the internet we start connecting companies. The future will be ecosystem level. We already know it. So companies have to devise today what they think will be their next value chain, where they will be competing, and in which ecosystem or ecosystems they will be competing. And ecosystems are basically networks of networks. And why we're seeing this? Because everything is being connected, and now we have technologies that are directed to ecosystem level strategies. And the blockchain being a very good example of it. So I invite companies to make this calculation and try to, at the same time, acquire the power of the technologies that are being built and identify in which chess game they want to play tomorrow. Because if they just transform with the technologies that they know today, they may be out of business.
So, Philippe, do you think that when we talk about digital transformation, we are talking always about the future, not the present? Because a lot of people used to think, okay, let's do this digital transformation for now, because I want to be more effective and I have more profits right now. Digital transformation, it's to think what's going to be. I don't know, with the words of Paulo.
Yeah, but digital transformation is not a new term. It has been 10 years that it's used to disrupt through technology the way we operate and to have better performance results. So there is, I think, no real choice. We have to transform. We have to use technology disruption. We have the cloud with the thousands of services which can combine to create. So it's more easy on the technology side than before. You don't have to invest on computers, on storage, and so on. So that's why for startup who disrupt, it's more easy also to be a strong player in their industry. And for the large companies, they have to benefit from this technology move and to creatively imagine the way they will operate.
And we are talking here in the perspective of the companies that are selling, right? My question is, how should we look to the consumer to have a digital transformation even better and more efficient? Paul?
On the consumer side?
Yeah.
That's easy.
It's easy.
Because there was a big change during the last decade on the learning process. We saw, and I'm here for a few years, so we saw digital transformation and the consumer evolution before at a slower pace, much slower pace. What happened in the last decade was a combination of two factors. First, social networks that came, well, stronger in the previous decade, and mobility. And today, if we think about it, we are using the mobile phone, I don't know, every minute or every hour or something. We are always connected. So what happens is people learn together much faster. So we can count on that. So it's not a question of, going to the university and have courses or something. Of course you can have it, but we can learn together as society much faster. So we can build on it. And we should tackle that capability. And even companies and governments or whoever entity you want, they're already using it for some purposes, but you can also use it to increase the digital capabilities of people that it's learning by doing with themselves, a lot of emotions, because networks are pretty emotional, and something that I know, because I'm a professor, without emotions, we don't learn. It's exactly the opposite. We need emotions, and we can use it to our advantage.
Use emotions.
Oh, yes.
Isn't that very dangerous in one way? We have a thin line over there.
I know. It is what it is. We can discuss it, but yeah, it's like it's like a coin that has two faces. It's like nuclear energy that you can use. It's the same thing. It's dangerous, of course it is. Can you use it to manipulate? Of course you can. Don't do it. It's a question of that's not what we want. So don't do it. And more than that, we can create on the people side the capability of being resilient to manipulation, like learn to verify your facts, ask questions twice before jumping into conclusions, and so on and so forth. So all that, yeah, you can do it. I'm not saying I'm not going to do it, but yeah, I believe in it, and at least with my students, I try to do something.
Philip, this is a great clue to the next question. How can we link correctly the digitalization and ethics in this world?
Yeah,
it's tricky, isn't it?
In our company, we talk about creative tech for a better change. That is, use technology in a moral way. And it's, as you said, it's not so easy. This morning you had the figures of the data created, 78 zettabytes. So you use the data, but still you have to deep dive on the persona of the consumer, or the employee, or the partner, to have empathy, to imagine his reaction if you use the data you have on him badly. And it's part of the process of creating digital products. We create data products, but it takes into account the empathy and the benefit of consumer or employee or partners.
Is there any strict rules for that kind of things, or it's our ethic, our way of being honest? Trust in ourselves only when we are doing this kind of digitalization.
There is a lot on research, for instance, to create ethical AI products, artificial intelligence products. So yeah, there is technology to help, but the basis is the way you imagine your product, your services, and you behave in front of your customer.
Paulo, para terminar, to finish this conversation, we start with 84% of failing the digitalization, the transformation. When are we going to change these numbers? We are in this century, we think that we have metaverse and all those things. How can we change this?
Well, the numbers are not new, because when I started lecturing...
That's the danger thing. It's not new.
That's the issue. The numbers in the 90s with traditional re-engineering projects, it was 20% success, like 80% failures, and we know that. It's still the same. Yeah, we are talking about people. It's difficult. But there are what can we do about it? That's the question,
that's the
right?
question.
Okay. First, apply methodologies, like do leadership methodology. We know, it's known. We know what we have to do, like value drivers, value creation.
Why didn't we till now? That's my question, looking forward into the future.
There are a number of, it's like a recipe. If I like cooking and I like eating, so in a recipe, you need to have all your ingredients right. If you fail one ingredient, you have a loss. And sometimes we focus too much on some ingredients, and we need everything put together. That's the difficulty. So, but it's known, meaning we know which ingredients you need to look at. Just you saw Mike's speech. He talked about these 10 instruments. if he was here, he would continue up to around 50 concepts that we know. At least if you have it, the probability of success will be greater. And then you need to lead, to know how to lead people and transformation, all these things. And the next level of transformation will be ecosystem level. And we can tackle systems that already work for everybody. And you don't need much transformation there because it's already available. And that is something, once again, that companies have to think about in the next step.
Philippe, Paulo,
Thank you.
thank you. Merci.
Thank you.
Next time, and we have better news in this digital transformation. Thank you both. Thank you.
Thank you.